welcome to this new video for my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Caro Herrera, and today I'm going to be reviewing a book called Lionheart. It was written by Sharon Kay Penman and published in 2011, and it's the fourth novel of the author's Plantagenet series. Anyways, before I begin though, let me just say that this will be a spoiler-free video. But since Lionheart is historical fiction, the general outline of it is already known to some people out there because it's based on historical events. As I mentioned earlier, in the book we follow Richard as he goes on this crusade to rescue Jerusalem. The book covers around 3 years, and we not only get to catch up with the other members of the Plantagenet dynasty I had previously fallen for, historical figures like Richard's mother and his youngest brother John, but we also get to meet other very interesting characters, some of them new, some of them only previously mentioned in the author's other works. And in Lionheart we also get to travel to the exotic Middle East at a very interesting time in history, where the Knights Templar first began to make a name for themselves, and we also get to visit places like Sicily and Cyprus. Also, and this is a bit of a side note, but since I'm talking about Jerusalem, Knights and Crusades, when I was growing up, I really liked the movie Kingdom of Heaven, which deals with the events that come just before what Lionheart covers. Kingdom of Heaven is not that historically accurate, though, so I was very pleased to learn that Sharon Kay Penman will release in 2020 a novel called The Land Beyond the Sea, which deals with the real events that we saw covered in Kingdom of Heaven. So this means that Penman has not only written 5 books in her Plantagenet series, she also has the Welsh Princess trilogy that can be considered its sequel, and now with the release of this new novel, which I shall of course be reading and reviewing, we will also have a sort of spin-off story taking place between book 3 and 4 of her Plantagenet series, set in the Middle East. I give Lionheart a 4 out of 5 stars review because I ended up enjoying it more than I thought that I would. I shouldn't be surprised though, seeing as Sharon Kay Penman is my 3rd favorite author ever. But still, I initially had this hesitation of reading, as I said, more about Richard I, but thankfully Sharon Kay Penman didn't disappoint me, and I found her portrayal of this English monarch to be very interesting. I actually enjoyed learning a lot about this person that I thought I wouldn't be able to tolerate. For example, I didn't know that he'd been married. Moving on, as a journalist, I'm always happy to see the level of research authors put into their works, and in the end we get a pretty detailed account of what Richard was doing during his time in the Holy Land. And as to the politics that were going on in this period of time in this specific place, I found them very interesting as well. And I love the fact that it added more layers to stories that I already cherished, the Plantagenet series, and what we get to see in Kingdom of Heaven. And what I sort of mean here is that, for example, my favorite book by Sharon Kay Penman is Here Be Dragons, her first novel in the Welsh Princess trilogy, and there we briefly meet Joanna, Richard's sister, but in Lionheart, she's one of the main characters, and this means that when I reread Here Be Dragons one day, I'll already know way more of this character that I previously liked but hadn't known that I would treasure. This book deals with Richard I, King of England, also known as Richard the Lionheart, and of his experiences in the 12th century in the Middle East during a crusade. Growing up, all I knew about this subject, despite the fact that I've always loved history, was what I learned from the Robin Hood legends and movies. But years later, in 2019, I was encouraged by a viewer here on YouTube to read more of Sharon Kay Penman's works. I already loved this author because of her book The Sun and Splendor, which deals with the life of Richard III and with the War of the Roses. So I listened to this person and I ended up falling in love with the author's Welsh Princess trilogy. And then when I discovered that Sharon Kay Penman had written a prequel series to the Welsh Princess trilogy, dealing with the famous Plantagenets who ruled England during the Middle Ages, I just had to read them as well. And it took me no time at all to fall for Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, and their children, even King John. But yeah, King John's older sibling is Richard the Lionheart. But if I'm being honest, during the first 3 books of this Plantagenet series, I wasn't keen on Richard. And if I'm being even more honest, he's still not my favorite Plantagenet. Maybe this is in part because he wasn't a romantic figure with this fantastic love story, because I'm a sucker for romance. But yeah, I'm saying this because when I first learned that in this series, the author more or less focused the 4th and 5th book in this series on Richard, I wasn't that keen on getting to know him better, especially because I really ended up hating Richard after Devil's Brood, the 3rd book in the series. But in the end, since by this point I had already fallen for the Middle Ages and for this family, I decided to give Lionheart a try. For the moment though, I believe that this is all I have to say about Lionheart. Thank you so much for watching my review of it. Please let me know if you enjoyed it or not. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you did, as well as let me know what are your own thoughts on King Richard, the Plantagenets, the author, Crusades. Next week, I'm gonna be posting my review for Lionheart's sequel, A King's Ransom, the author's 5th book in her Plantagenet series, so be on the lookout for that. Also, in the description box below, you can find a link to the book's Goodreads page, as well as links to my reviews for the 3 books that come before Lionheart in this series. And when I post my review for A King's Ransom, I shall also be posting a link to that review in the description box below. Anyways, I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler, and I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye!